Good evening. You're watching the news at 7:30 on ATV. I'm Anne Reeson.
And I'm Emily Sue. Here's a look at tonight's top stories.
District Councillor says government's landfill predictions are a load of rubbish.
Government's public housing waiting list claims are misleading, according to lawmaker.
Arrest warrant issued for captain of South Korean ferry that sank on Wednesday.
District Councillor Christine Fong has accused the government of scare tactics in its bid to expand the city's rubbish tips and build a controversial incinerator on an island.
Fong argues that the dump can manage to take in rubbish for a few more years. Yeung reports.
Hong Kong's dumps are filling up fast and will be overflowing with rubbish sooner rather than later. That's the message the government has been drilling into the population over the past few years. But it hasn't changed the public's opposition to its plans to expand landfills and build an incinerator. On a radio show this morning, Sai Kung District Councillor Christine Fong accused the government of fear-mongering, saying its claims that the Yeung tip will be full next year is a wild exaggeration. Fong doesn't believe it and says the Environment Bureau is fiddling the figures. According to her calculations, the Yeung landfill can handle 1 million cubic meters of waste a year, and she believes it can still operate for another 5 years. But World Green Organization Chief Executive Officer William Yeung insists it's hard to calculate the usage rate of landfills and how quickly they will fill up. He says people should wake up to the reality of the city's waste problem and called for the incinerator plans and landfill expansions to be passed in LegCo. Yu said if they aren't approved now, it will be harder to pass them in the future. Yeung residents have long complained about the landfill, with many saying that it's too close to residential buildings and is smelly and causes health problems. Yu blamed bad town planning for the current problem and suggests building more recycling facilities and compensation paid to people who live near dumps. He didn't say where all the money would come from to pay for his plans. Fong hit back, saying it's not about compensation, but the health and safety of the locals. The government's controversial waste disposal plan cleared the first hurdle in LegCo last month after lawmakers on the panel on environmental affairs approved expanding landfills in Yeung, Tuen Mun and Ta Kwu Ling, as well as building a massive incinerator on Shek Kwu Chau between Lantau and Cheung Chau. The second round of voting on the government's funding request has been pushed back to next month. Last year, the Environment Bureau was forced to shelve plans to expand all 3 landfills after massive opposition from residents and lawmakers. Yeung, ATV News.
Democratic Party lawmaker Wu Chi-wai says the government's claim that people on the waiting list for public housing can move into a flat after 3 years is untrue and a play with words.
At the same time, Tourism Commissioner Yeung has defended the government's mega events fund after it came under fire in the latest audit report. In a bid to tackle Hong Kong's housing shortage, the government promised in January to build 200,000 new public rental flats by 2022, 20,000 more than its previous target of 180,000. But the latest audit report released on Wednesday cast serious doubt on that, saying there simply isn't enough land to build that many flats. Speaking on the radio this morning, Democratic Party lawmaker Wu Chi-wai, who's also on LegCo's housing panel, said he's not surprised by the Audit Commission's findings. Wu said according to his calculations, the government won't be able to make any larger plots of land available for construction until 2020. He said it's a big problem and also criticized the administration's plan to build flats in between existing public housing estates, as it would greatly affect the quality of life of the nearby residents. The watchdog also warned that the public housing shortage could extend waiting times from 3 years to 5 years by 2020. Wu agreed and called the government's claim that people on the waiting list can move in by 3 years a play with words. Wu said public housing applicants usually have to wait at least 3 years before they're eligible, but there's no guarantee they will get picked in the lucky draw. He said many applicants wait much longer than 3 years before they get a government flat. The Audit Commission also accused the Tourism Commission's Mega Events Fund of wasting public money by not operating efficiently and failing to attract overseas visitors. Its report also revealed potential conflicts of interest and irregularities in the fund's accounts and records. During a telephone interview on radio this morning, Tourism Commissioner Yeung defended himself. He insisted 69% of funding applications have been turned down over the past few years because of the fund's strict rules. But he said he will consider bringing in registered accountants to better monitor the fund's accounts and records. Asked if anyone in the fund's assessment committee failed to do their jobs properly, Yeung said it was short-staffed, but everyone there tries to do their best. He stopped short of saying anyone on the committee would be punished. The Mega Events Fund was set up to sponsor some of the city's biggest cultural and sporting events, including the Dragon Boat Carnival and the Hong Kong Golf Open. The health chief has warned people traveling to the Middle East to be vigilant, following more cases of Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome surfaced in Asia.
But first, now a roundup of local news. 3 people have tested positive for dengue fever after travelling abroad. Yeung reports.
The Centre for Health Protection is investigating 3 dengue fever cases after a family contracted the disease overseas. A 64-year-old man and his 64-year-old wife were admitted to hospital after developing the symptoms, which included fever, rashes and nausea. Their 31-year-old son was also hospitalized when he developed the same symptoms. They are all in a stable condition and blood results came back positive for dengue fever. The 3 had just returned from a holiday in Indonesia. Health Secretary Yeung has raised concerns about the number of cases of Middle East respiratory syndrome in recent weeks. New cases have been confirmed in Malaysia and the Philippines, and the patients had previously been to the Middle East. Yeung also warned there is strong evidence to suggest the virus could be transmitted from human to human. The health minister has called on local hospitals to look out for the disease and urged travellers going to the Middle East not to touch wild animals. He added there have been 240 cases so far, 90 of them fatal. Police were investigating outside Paktin Estate in Shamshopo after a man was run over by a minibus. The accident happened at around 9 a.m. this morning when the driver was heading down Nam Chong Street. Police suspect the minibus driver was speeding and hit the pedestrian when he couldn't brake in time. The 30-year-old man is in a serious condition at Princess Margaret Hospital. Yeung, ATV News.
A replica of a controversial statue has been unveiled in the city's first museum, dedicated to the 1989 crackdown on students in Tiananmen Square.
But the owners of the building where the exhibition is being set up are trying to shut it down even before it opens. Unionist lawmaker Li Che and other members of the Alliance in support of patriotic movement in China unloaded a symbolic statue off a truck in Tsim Sha Tsui this morning. After being separated for easier transportation, the replica of the Goddess of Democracy was reassembled at a soon-to-be-opened June 4th museum, the city's first exhibition dedicated to the 1989 Tiananmen Square crackdown on student activists.
Well, I'm worried because people may stop the movement of this statue, but I think we successfully moved in this statue and we try to do something, a new page for the goodness of democracy.
6 art school graduates made the plaster statue, but none of them want to admit to their involvement. The original Goddess of Democracy was a 10-meter-high styrofoam and papier-mâché statue made by pro-democracy activists during the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests. It was erected on the 30th of May that year, but was destroyed days later when troops were sent in to clear the square.
So we hope that after coming through the whole museum, they have that June 4th experience of anger and also of hope. The hope lies with the Goddess of Democracy, and we are representing ideals, and we will fight onward for democracy in China.
The 800 square feet exhibition isn't opening its doors to the public until next weekend, but is already causing controversy. The building's owners committee want to stop it from opening. The owners claim that they have legal documents saying that units should only be used for offices and that a museum will attract an inordinate number of visitors.
We are only trying to exhibit what happened in June 4th, and then we have to face a legal challenge. So I think this is an act on we don't know where the money comes from, an act to suppress the opening of this museum. We believe it's a political motivated legal challenge because there's only 2 owners out of the 17 who are saying that they will foot the bill, which is very, very unusual.
Lee says they have already consulted their lawyers. A Beijing court has jailed 4 activists for up to 3.5 years for their role in small anti-corruption protests in the latest crackdown on dissent.
Their lawyers slammed the sentences as too heavy, insisting the real reason for the convictions was that they had pressed for government officials to disclose their assets. There was a heavy police presence outside the Haidian District People's Court in Beijing this morning for the sentencing of 4 rights activists charged with gathering a crowd to disturb public order for holding small anti-corruption protests in the capital last year. Ding Jiaxi, a well-known human rights lawyer, was jailed for 3.5 years, while veteran activist Zhao Chanqing was jailed for 2.5 years, the court said on its microblog. Fellow protesters Zhang Baocheng and Li Wei both received 2-year sentences. All 4 faced a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison. One of the lawyers representing Ding slammed the sentences as too harsh. Zhang Keke thinks the real reason for the convictions was that the activists had pressed for government officials to disclose their assets. Zhang said Ding would appeal. The 4 are part of the New Citizens Movement, a loose-knit network whose members held peaceful protests in Beijing last year. According to their arrest warrants, police accuse the 4 activists of organising and carrying out street political activities, from displaying banners to making speeches urging officials to disclose their assets. The verdicts come days after Beijing's High Court upheld a 4-year sentence for Yeung, a founder of the movement, who was jailed for several rallies he organised in front of the Ministry of Education to demand equal education rights. 10 New Citizens Movement members have faced trial this year. The grassroots group promotes clean governance and advocates working within the system for change. The ruling Communist Party has repeatedly vowed to combat rampant corruption, with President Xi Jinping threatening to target high-ranking tigers and low-level flies in the face of public anger over the issue. But Beijing has cracked down on activists pursuing the same goals, viewing independently organised anti-corruption protests as a challenge to its grip on power. Turning overseas, 28 people have now been confirmed dead, while 268 are still missing after Wednesday's ferry disaster in South Korea, and authorities arresting the captain.
In an unexpected twist to the tragedy, a vice principal from the school where many of the students were passengers is believed to have committed suicide after he was rescued. Britton Clennet reports.
As South Korean Navy divers and Coast Guard boats continued the search for survivors of the country's worst maritime disaster in more than 20 years, there was more tragic news. A deputy head teacher who was rescued from the ferry that sank with hundreds of his pupils on board is believed to have committed suicide. 52-year-old Kang Min-kyu was found hanged near a makeshift emergency hall set up for survivors. The ferry began sinking just before 9 o'clock Wednesday morning while on its way from Incheon to Jeju, with around 500 people on board, most of them students and teachers on a school outing to the resort island. It sank within 2 hours. Hopes to recover anyone still alive are fading fast.
15시 26분경.
The Coast Guard said today that no more survivors had been found and divers had not managed to enter the hull of the capsized ferry. Beijing has confirmed there are 4 Chinese nationals among the missing. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying said the Chinese embassy in Seoul is making sure no efforts are spared. Investigators now say the 3rd officer was at the helm when the ship began to sink. It's not known where the captain was or what he was doing at the time. Distraught friends and relatives of the missing students waited anxiously for news at this school today. Many of them complained that it took too long for the passengers to be evacuated. It's still not known why the ship sank. Survivors say they heard a loud thud and felt the ferry shake before it began tilting. Some said they were told not to move by the crew. Yesterday, an executive from the ferry's owner, Chonghaejin Marine Company, apologised to families of the dead and missing. The ship's captain is also being questioned. Lee Jun-sok apologised to the families of the victims. Britton Clennet, ATV News.
Still to come on ATV's main news tonight. Tributes pour in after death of Colombian writer Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
And defending champion Novak Djokovic breezes through to Monte Carlo Masters quarter-finals.
you a happy Easter. When it comes to weather, you know it's accuracy that matters. Weather report, tonight at 7:55. Battling for the MasterChef crown, taking the challenge to make delicacies. Going through rounds of tough tests, who can stay till the very end? Finally, the most exciting moment comes. Celebrity MasterChef 7, Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday night at 9.
Shopfront extensions create inconvenience for other people and can be messy. What should be done? The government is now consulting the public on the enhanced measures against shopfront extensions. The consultation document is available at these departments or on their websites. The pavement is for everyone's use. Please share your views by July 14.
Masterpiece of nature attracts so many climbers. Trek up the mountain. Breathtaking views are all the way. Amazing creatures add more fun. Take adventures. Reach the summit. Embrace cheers on the top. All About documentary, The Great Summits 2, Saturday night at 10. This Easter, all celebrations will start here on World. Friday night at 8:30, China Life Overseas Special, ATV Hong Kong Loving Hearts 2013 presentation ceremony. Sunday night at 8:30, the New Year's concert at the Vienna Philharmonic 2014. ATV wishes you a happy Easter.
We continue overseas. Tributes have been pouring in for Nobel Prize-winning writer Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who died at the age of 87 following a bout of pneumonia.
But first, in a roundup of international stories, Toronto Mayor Rob Ford, who was caught on camera smoking crack last year, has kicked off his re-election campaign. Britton Clennett reports.
Toronto Mayor Rob Ford took to the stage to launch his re-election bid. Ford has been a major embarrassment for Canada's biggest city after he admitted to smoking crack cocaine and buying illegal drugs. He was also seen in a video making death threats to an unspecified person during a drunken rant. But he's pledged to clean up his act.
Though there has been some rocky moments over the past year, I have experienced how none of us can go through life without making mistakes. And when they occur, we learn a lot about ourselves. Humility, the kindness of people, and the spirit of second chances.
Although he has apologised repeatedly, he has refused to step down. And the council cannot oust him because he hasn't been convicted of a crime. US Secretary of State John Kerry took off from Geneva following crisis talks on Ukraine. The meeting between Russia and Western powers aimed at ending the violence was hailed as promising. All parties agreed illegal military groups should leave, those occupying government buildings must drop their weapons, and that anti-government protesters would be granted amnesty. The US and Europe believe Russia is orchestrating an uprising in eastern Ukraine, but Moscow says the Ukrainians are simply angry that their elected leader was overthrown by pro-West protesters backed by Washington and its allies. The body of Colombian author Gabriel Garcia Marquez was taken from his Mexico City home for a private cremation ceremony. The Nobel Prize winner, who was considered one of the greatest South American authors, passed away following a bout of pneumonia. He was 87. Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos declared 3 days of mourning for their national icon, while Mexico announced a memorial service will be held at Mexico City's Bellas Artes Palace on Monday. Meanwhile, tributes have been pouring in from world leaders and celebrities to the man known affectionately as Gabo. Colombian pop star Shakira said Gabo would always be in her heart. Garcia Marquez was best known for his 1967 magical realism novel 100 Years of Solitude. It sold more than 30 million copies and was honoured with a Nobel Prize for Literature in 1982. He leaves behind his wife of more than 55 years and their 2 sons. Britain Clennett, ATV News.
Health authorities are warning holiday makers going to the mainland to avoid wet markets and farms so they don't catch the H7N9 bird flu virus.
The warning comes as tens of thousands of travellers head abroad for the Easter break. Holidaymakers flocked in droves to airline counters this morning to take advantage of the 4-day Easter holiday. Travel agents said Japan and South Korea topped the list of popular holiday destinations again this year, with bookings up 10% compared to last Easter. They said the main attraction in Japan was the cherry blossoms, while Hong Kongers also chose South Korea because their dramas are quite popular here. Although Cambodia and Vietnam proved to be popular as well this year. This young girl said she was heading to Indonesia with her family to sample the good food. While this young traveller's family was taking her to Tokyo to check out popular anime titles and to eat sushi. On the 1st of April, Japan raised its sales tax from 5% to 8%, but that didn't deter some holidaymakers. This woman believes the tax hike is acceptable. While this tourist says she's already been to Tokyo, so she wanted to try out Hokkaido instead. The Centre for Health Protection, meanwhile, today warned travellers to avoid wet markets and farms, particularly if they're headed across the border for Easter. That's after mainland health authorities reported a new case of the deadly H7N9 bird flu virus in Jiangsu province. The case involves a 60-year-old man who has been admitted to hospital for treatment.
Time now for sports with Raymond Yeung.
And top tennis players had their way at Monte Carlo.
Well, that's right. It seemed they hardly broke into a sweat. Defending champion Novak Djokovic lost just 1 game on his way to the quarterfinals, while Roger Federer got off to a bumpy start. Lucas Rosso couldn't have asked for a better start against his third-round opponent Roger Federer at the Monte Carlo Masters, as he broke into a 3-1 lead. But Federer clawed his way back with the help of some agile net play. The 4th-seeded Swiss quickly gained control of the match soon, winning the opener 6-4 after Rosso hit long on his return. It was a walkover for Federer from that point onwards, eventually seeing off the Czech 6-1 and wrapping things up in less than an hour. Defending champion Novak Djokovic had an even easier path to the quarterfinals. The Serb put on a clinic for Spaniard Pablo Carreno Busta, who was named ATP's most improved player last year. But the 22-year-old was no match against the world number 2, losing the first set 6-love. Djokovic, who was in top form after claiming an Indian Wells and Miami Masters double, seemed like he was at a warm-up session at times. He went on to dismiss Carreno Busta 6-1 to reserve his quarter-final ticket. Earlier in the day, top seed Rafael Nadal was also at his best when he faced unseeded Andrea Seppi of Italy. The king of clay, whose string of 8 consecutive titles was broken by Djokovic last year, delighted fans with his powerful forehand stroke. The Spanish world number 1 will now face compatriot David Ferrer in the last 8, after going past Seppi 6-1, 6-3 for his 30th straight win on clay. Over in Formula 1, Lewis Hamilton clocked the fastest time after their second practice at the Chinese Grand Prix in Shanghai. With a suspension failure, but he still finished ahead of his competitors with a time of 1 minute 38.315 seconds. He finished 0.14 seconds ahead of Fernando Alonso, whose strong performance gave a glimmer of hope for Ferrari, which has not had a podium finish this season. Pastor Maldonado made a bizarre mistake
when he lost control on a corner while changing settings on his steering wheel. Finally, in football, local champions Kichi lifted their third league trophy in 4 years after an unbeaten run lasting the entire season. The title was already decided before their finale against South China at Mongkok Stadium last night, but the Carolinas were keen to spoil Kichi's party, with Brazilian Diego Martins scoring from a penalty on the hour mark to take the lead. The home side drew level just 12 minutes later, also from the spot. Spaniard Diego Cascon knotted things up for Kichi as they held on for the 1-1 draw. They became the first unbeaten side to lift the first division trophy since 1986. And a look at the weather before we go. Hong Kong welcomed the long Easter weekend with fine and hot weather. Temperatures range from 22.4 to 28.6 degrees, while the relative humidity was between 70 and 95%. Winds were light to moderate coming in from the southeast. Let's check on the ultraviolet reading. The maximum recorded for the day was 8. Tomorrow's UV index will be around 8 as well. Now for a look at the weather in the region. A warm maritime airstream is affecting the coastal areas of Guangdong. And now the satellite images. The weather is mainly fine over the southeastern coast of China. Here's what we can expect over the next few days. Even hotter tomorrow, which will be fine with coastal fog in the morning and night. Temperatures will range from 22 to 29 degrees. More of the same conditions over the rest of Easter, which will be rather hot and humid. Here are the latest pollution readings under the Air Quality Health Index. General stations are at 3 to 4, meaning the health risk is low to moderate. Roadside levels are at 4 to 5, and the health risk is moderate. Finally, here's the weather around the world.
That's our main news for Good Friday. We'll have an update in 1 hour. I'm Emily Sue.
I'm Raymond.
And I'm Anne-Marie Sim. Thanks for watching ATV and enjoy your Easter weekend. Good night.
Good night.
Coming up, a window on. Sharing touching stories, bringing positive energy to society. Their warm hearts have made Hong Kong a loving home. China Life Overseas Special, ATV Hong Kong Loving Hearts 2013 presentation ceremony, tonight at 8:30. Soccer Fever, Amazing April. Motherwell versus Celtic, tomorrow night at 7:45, live on World Channel. Watch the live show on your phone and ATV website. Diving into the coral sea of New Guinea. Exploring the great variety of amazing species. Embrace the charm of this unique habitat. Science on the Seven Seas, Saturday night at 9:30. The most famous New Year concert in the world. Spreads joy and optimism for the new year ahead. This new year is bound to be a fabulous one. Heavenly music is in the air. ATV Easter Celebration, the New Year's concert at the Vienna Philharmonic 2014, Sunday night at 8:30. Science doesn't mean boring data. It's full of wonders and comes from everywhere. Everything around us carries amazing secrets you may not know. Follow scientists. Discover the fun of the unknown. Documentary World. Know it. Thursday night at 9. Love it? Say it. Discover the latest and the hottest trends in Japan. Feel the pulse of the vibrant and fabulous culture. JP Time TV. Every Sunday.